You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength of street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge. Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.
Damn, that shit was dope.
And welcome back to the Warrior Creed live stream with me, the radical Majid Nawaz. And today we are addressing the topic on your screens now, and that is Henry Nowak stabbed multiple times, dies while handcuffed and arrested, saying, "I can't breathe." That is the topic for today's stream. Here is a image of the moment Henry Nowak was in fact restrained by police. This is an image of him on his back, from his back, I should say, on his side on the floor. He is attempting here to tell the officers that he cannot breathe. And what's happened instead is that the officers didn't believe him. And he died while being restrained in this way, being handcuffed by police. You can see two police officers there. The graphic for today's stream is on your screens now. That is an image of a media pundit stroke protester screaming, "I can't breathe," with a George Floyd image on the top of the image there. And the second, at the bottom of the screen, the second image is the same pundit stroke activist turning their heads away from a similarly hoisted poster of Henry Nowak saying, "I can't breathe." That is appropriate, we feel, for the sheer and utter national tragedy that has struck the consciousness of this nation. This case means a lot more to the country than merely one man, though, of course, the tragedy of this one man's death is in itself very, very sad. But it has come to symbolize something greater, and that is decades upon decades of frustration at the state of integration, citizenship, multiculturalism in the United Kingdom. And it is for that reason that it has become a story larger than life, a story that has become bigger than the individual Henry Nowak himself. May he rest in peace. This has become a national moment for the United Kingdom, probably only best analogous in its opposite sense to the killing of Stephen Lawrence and the Macpherson inquiry and the coining of the phrase institutional racism. This is a rebalancing moment in the British psyche. It cannot be overstated what is happening in the United Kingdom right now. Henry Nowak, stabbed multiple times, dies while handcuffed and arrested, saying, "I can't breathe," is the topic today. That is the title for today's stream. Again, this is the image of Henry Nowak dying while being handcuffed after having been stabbed multiple times by a British Sikh who was carrying a weapon, presumably under the exemption that they had believed themselves to be entitled to, that applies to British Sikhs, and that is that they can carry a kirpan, or a ceremonial blade, that is one of the 5 Ks, or the 5 pillars of their faith. And so it is presumed that the person who is now convicted for killing Henry Nowak, a British Sikh, was carrying that blade under that belief. And yet, of course, the body cam footage that we're about to show you is a harrowing scene that leaves you only really being able to sympathize with Henry Nowak and be in exasperation, in fact, at the turn of events that unfolded once the police intervened. And then subsequently, of course, what is learned about the family that reported him, the Sikh family, it is leaves much to be desired. We're going to go into all of that information for you now. Before we do, it behooves us to begin this stream by saying that it is important to understand that this stream will contain footage, real footage from police body cam that may trigger some people. It may upset some people. These are the last moments of the 18-year-old boy, Henry Nowak. They are tragic. They are horrific. And if listening to such emotionally charged content disturbs you, then perhaps you may wish to return after a few minutes once we have played the footage that we're about to show everybody. But let's begin to give everyone a time to collect themselves. Let's begin with the headline in the Times of London. And that is here on your screens for you now. That is from today, because Nigel Farage has intervened in this topic. It has become a national topic, one that has caught the attention of the nation. You can see Nigel Farage's intervention there. Henry Nowak case shows racism seen as more serious than murder. That is the headline there for the Times, because Nigel Farage issued an emergency address this morning at 8 a.m. on that. But before we get to the emergency address, let's move to just quoting from the Times. That's on your screens now. Farage, the leader of Reform UK, said the rights and privileges of white people matter less than those of minorities, after footage was released of police arresting Henry Nowak, 18, for alleged racial abuse minutes before he died of a stab wound. Vikram Digwa, 23, had attacked the finance student with a 21-centimeter Sikh ceremonial dagger as he walked home from a night out, before telling police officers Nowak had racially abused him. Police body cam footage released on Monday showed Nowak repeatedly told police, "I can't breathe," and that he had been stabbed as they handcuffed him, only for officers to say they did not believe him. Farage said the officer's response showed that an accusation of racial slur was treated more seriously than an act of murder, likening the row to the murder of George Floyd, which sparked widespread Black Lives Matter protests in 2020. So that is really the topic that has captured public imagination. It is the topic that has gripped the attention of Britain today. And it is not a story that is going away anytime soon. That is the story of the death of the tragic death of the teenager, the 18-year-old Henry Nowak, in police handcuffs after having been stabbed multiple times while attempting to tell the police that he couldn't breathe. We're now going to play the distressing body cam footage, which has been reported by the Guido Fawkes blog. Body cam footage of 18-year-old Henry Nowak arrests shortly prior to his death by stabbing. So this is the footage that is we're going to place on your screens now. So this would be the appropriate time for anybody that doesn't want to see Henry Nowak's last moments from the police cameras to turn away for a couple of minutes. But we put this on the screens now for you, and it is indeed very sad. And you will hear in this footage Henry Nowak attempting to alert the officers that he couldn't breathe, and the officers sadly seemed to dismiss his concerns. We're going to play this for you, just for you to listen through to it yourselves. It's 2 minutes 36 seconds long, and should be on your screens now, just to confirm that it is. Indeed it is, and here we go.
He's jumped over these fences and stuff like that. And he's up
Move
here.
away, mate.
He's obviously... He's fallen from there and he slipped from there.
There's other shooters left over there, mate.
What's your name, mate? Huh? Has anyone been hurt other than him?
Yeah, me.
He's grabbed my brother. He's jumped over these fences and stuff like that. And he's up
Move
here.
away, mate.
He's obviously... He's fallen from there and he slipped from there.
There's other shooters left over there, mate.
What's your name, mate? Huh? Has anyone been hurt other than him?
Yeah, me.
He's grabbed my brother. He's took my turban off, started grabbing my head.
Are you injured?
Yeah, I've got swollen eye, little bruise.
Alright, just step back a little bit for me. Someone flag these down.
I just stabbed.
Right, let's get you out of there, shall we?
I was in bed asleep. Whenever just find out someone's attacked me.
Grab his other arm. What's happened to you, alright? You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? I don't think you have, mate. Hand?
I can't breathe.
Put the hand in the cuff, mate.
This is like times this has happened to us. We've been walking, we parked multiple times we've had people racistly attacked us, still nothing happened.
He's saying he's been stabbed, so
Where
let's
do you
just
think
check
you've
him.
been stabbed? In the face? Oh no, but we have to check, don't we?
Right.
In the face?
Just get these to back off, get their details on that, and I'll keep hold of him.
Please, brother, I can't breathe.
Should we
Right, keep you on your side, mate. You got to retrieve then.
say again?
Saying to him, keeping him on his side. We were sat up when we had him here, but you didn't like it. What's your name, mate? At the moment, you are under arrest, and that's for assault, so you do not have to say anything, may harm in defence. If you do not make your own questions, so we'll reach you later line of court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence, alright? It's going to be sick, I think.
What's his name?
I just want you to call it.
Yeah, we've got this male. He's
Just-
been beat up. Are we able to get an ambulance, please?
His pupils aren't even reacting.
That was the tragic body cam footage from the police themselves, released post-conviction of Henry Nowak's killer. It is, of course, incredibly sad to watch this 18-year-old boy attempt to alert police to the fact that he's been stabbed, and the police in audible within the video say, "Don't think so, mate," as their initial response to that. The other officer does subsequently realize something is terribly wrong, because you hear her on the camera saying even his pupils aren't responding. She's trying to shine light into his pupils. Now, when that happens, that's a sure sign that the body's no longer responding to stimuli. In other words, he's dying. And so by that time, they realize it's too late. He dies in front of them. Of course, that disturbing footage has resulted in, from it in particular, this image that we showed you earlier, and is the thumbnail we're using for this stream. This image of Henry Nowak there, as you just saw in the video, on his side, being cuffed and restrained by two officers. That is the moment he's attempting to alert them to the fact that he cannot breathe, and that is the moment that he dies. It is perfectly understandable that the country is in a state of outrage. That is perfectly understandable. Nigel Farage's intervention that we're going to play in this stream encourages that state of anger, because he believes that only that will change the situation when people are sufficiently angered to do something about it. And of course, being somebody standing for the job of Prime Minister, as he is also trying to do something about it. And so it is important to understand that the rage should be positively channeled, but the rage is nevertheless perfectly understandable. This is a country that has just watched the live death of a young boy, attempting to alert the police that he's in fact the victim and not the perpetrator in this particular scenario, or having been stabbed. Who knows what happened before he was stabbed? There's some strange footage of him having recorded his attacker asking him if he was a bad boy, and then his attacker saying, yes, he is a bad boy, and then it appears as if that led to a conflict between them in the street. But none of that justifies stabbing to death an 18-year-old boy. And so really, it doesn't matter what happened before he was stabbed, because it's the fact that he was stabbed, which is in itself the aggression. Then, of course, the fact that he died, which is the tragedy. And then, of course, on top of that tragedy is the absurdity of the police and what they appear to have done on the video footage by not believing him and saying, I don't think so, mate, when all you really had to do is what the other officer did, which is say, well, actually, we do need to check just in case. But that initial disbelief is what has stirred the country into a sense of outrage, and it is perfectly valid. Anybody telling you otherwise, frankly, doesn't understand the country. Now, the part of the problem is that the attacker, who's now convicted, my system doesn't even make an effort to remember his name, because I've been so focused on the name of the victim, Henry Nowak. But just to recall his name for you, Vikram Digwa, who's now been convicted for the murder, the British Sikh killer. The weapon that was used has been published by the Times as a kirpan. And so It is, and it states explicitly in the Times newspaper that it was somebody, Vikram Digwa, had attacked the finance student with a 21 centimeter Sikh ceremonial dagger as he walked home from a night out. So that this brings into focus the exemption that applies to Sikhs for carrying the kirpan, which brings into the tragedy a wider conversation around multiculturalism and British values and integration. The Times has published this image of the kirpan that Henry Nowak is allegedly killed by. That should be on your screens now. That is the image published by the newspaper itself. And that very much does look like a ceremonial kirpan with the gotra, or the strap that is used to tie it around one's waist. The Times caption you can see under the image says Digwa's murder weapon. So despite some online rumors that it wasn't in fact a kirpan, the Times of London is calling this image that is on your screens now the murder weapon. There is a bloodstain on that weapon that the Times has shown and has labeled Digwa's murder weapon. And how they got hold of this, one imagines, is with the release of the body cam footage came other such evidential releases, because conviction has already happened. So the Times was able to publish this image. Now, that is very much a kirpan. And that is the murder weapon used to kill Paul Henry. And to move to the legal scenario, the exemption under British law for carrying the Sikh kirpan, the Business Standard reports on the 18th of May 2019 headlined, Sikhs can continue to carry kirpans despite tough new UK weapons bill. Now, let's read from that for you for a moment. There you see it on your screens. A new offensive weapons bill aimed at tackling rising knife crime in the UK completed its journey through Parliament to become an act of law after receiving the royal assent of Queen Elizabeth II this week. The bill had been amended late last year to ensure that it would not impact the right of the British Sikh community to possess and supply kirpans or religious swords. So that's the weapon. This is the Times having published the image of it. It's a legal right to carry that weapon. It's not a legal right to use it to kill somebody. Now, that's why it's become an incredibly controversial story, because the UK College of Policing's own guidance, as you can see on your screens now, we won't read all of it. We'll just say to you that the second heading and the second column in bold, kirpans in the UK and police service. Although there is no legally prescribed size in the UK, Section 139 brackets 5 of the Criminal Justice Act 1988 allows the wearing of a kirpan for religious reasons. That is in the UK College of Policing report, access 2nd of June 2026, in other words, today by me. The UK College of Policing briefs police officers that there is no legally prescribed size in carrying the kirpan, which is the weapon that was used by Digwa to kill Henry Nowak. Again, on your screens now, as published by the Times. So it doesn't require further explanation. Having understood all of that, it doesn't require much more in terms of imagination to come to the conclusion that this is a huge national issue now, because it is raising questions around, as Farage's video did, which we'll play for you, the emergency address made by Farage 8 a.m. this morning, raises questions around integration, equality under the law, exemptions, preferable treatment, and crucially, two-tier justice. And those are the themes that has rocked the nation after this tragic killing. The responses have been, it's fair to say, pretty much led by Nigel Farage. So we will come to that. But it is important, before we come to Nigel Farage's intervention, to prioritize the intervention of the family. So we are going to first play a video from a press conference provided by Henry Nowak's father, and what he had to say about the state of affairs and what happened to his son. We will play that for you now. This particular video does not contain any triggering footage, and so you don't necessarily, if you're not worried, you don't have to leave the screen. It is simply a press conference. Most of the footage from here on in will not contain any triggering image. So here we are. This is the father of Henry Nowak, and we'll play for you what he had to say. This is after conviction.
I am Henry Nowak's father. To my left is my daughter Olivia Nowak, Henry's older sister, and to her left is Lucy Ross, Henry's Nowak's mother. The jury confirmed what we've always known. Henry's life was taken from him unlawfully, violently, and without justification. Henry was 18 years old. He was kind, ambitious, loved, and full of promise. He had his whole life ahead of him, a degree to finish, places to see, and a future to build. That future was stolen from him, and no verdict or sentence will ever give it back. Henry did nothing wrong. He was one of the kindest, friendliest, and most inclusive people you could ever hope to meet. He was amazing in every way. On the 3rd of December last year, Henry was walking home from a night out with his university football teammates when he encountered Vikram Digwa, a man openly carrying a large knife on the streets of Britain. That knife was used to take Henry's life. He should have been safe walking home. Instead, he became another young life lost to the brutal reality of knife crime in this country. Henry had been stabbed multiple times, and as his chest filled with blood, he tried to escape. He was chased, abused, and filmed by Vikram Digwa and others. When police arrived, Henry was lying on the floor, barely able to sit up, and plainly in severe medical distress. With his final words, he told officers that he could not breathe. He told them he had been stabbed. In fact, Henry told officers that he could not breathe 9 times. He told them he had been stabbed 4 times. The response from one officer was, "I don't think you have, mate." The police have said they were misled by the murderer and that the scene when they arrived was complex. Unfortunately, it seems to us the truth is much simpler. The police were told by our son himself and by a member of the public who called 999 that they heard someone shout that they had been stabbed. But the police did not believe them. Henry was pulled across the gravel, his hands forced behind his back, and he was placed in handcuffs. Instead of being treated as a dying victim, police formally arrested Henry for assault and read him his rights. That was the last thing he heard. Henry did not die with dignity. He did not die with the care he deserved. He lost consciousness before anyone believed him. Let me be absolutely clear. We hold Vikram Digwa solely and 100% responsible for the brutal murder of our son. But Henry should not have died on the streets of Southampton in police custody. The way he was treated was inhumane and degrading. His murderer, however, was afforded decency. He was believed. He was not handcuffed when arrested. He was not handcuffed when transported to the police station. As far as we understand, he was never handcuffed at all. And, as Vikram Digwa himself told the court, whilst under arrest for Henry's murder, police even took him to the kitchen so he could choose his food. The contrast is unbearable. We believe the officers involved remain on duty, although we understand some may have since resigned. One was allowed to leave the force before she had given an account to the Independent Office of Police Conduct of what happened that evening. The IOPC investigation remains ongoing. Whilst we await its final report, we are calling on the Home Secretary to ensure that the IOPC has the resources, authority, and independence it needs to conduct a full, fearless, and transparent investigation. our families should not have to fight for the truth anymore. Despite the shocking actions of the police on that fatal night, the murder investigation was very different. We would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to Senior Investigating Officer DCI Rebecca Bartholomew, the Serious Crime Team, and particular officer in the case, Claire Proctor. We would also like to thank our incredible family liaison officers, Sarah Page and Trudy May, for their diligence, professionalism, and compassion throughout this investigation.
Now, again, that is terribly tragic and distressing to imagine the family going through that, having to have relived that through, of course, the media attention due to the body cam footage from the police, having had to listen to the pleas of their son's last moments must be a terrible, terrible thing. It is something that is only a father or a mother could imagine the pain. But not even know it unless having gone through it. This is a really sad moment, of course, for the family. It is why we led with the family response. But of course, there have been other responses as well. The Sikh Federation in the UK has responded, and we're going to play for you now what they've said on your screen. So we'll start with their statement. They've said, Jas Singh, representing the Sikh Federation UK, speaking at a press conference at Guru Nanak Gurdwara, Smethwick, following the sentencing of Vikram Digwal for 21 years for the murder of Henry Nowak. The Sikh community has unequivocally condemned in the strongest terms Vikram Digwal for not only the murder of Henry Nowak, for which he is solely responsible, but also the lies he has told. He made the wrong choice, should have pleaded guilty, and must now serve his lengthy prison sentence. This is a video from the Sikhs in the UK, and we'll play that for you now as well.
We condemn this action fully, as in the strongest terms. There's no space for this. And anybody who is been convinced by this or unclear will be very categorical. This individual, Vikram Digwal, lied in his statements. It's clear that he did not intend to go out to kill Henry Nowak. His intention wasn't to seek confrontation or to have any altercation. It happened. They were out on the street. It happened. It escalated. After it escalated, as I said earlier, Vikram had the choice. He chose to do what he did, and for that he is solely responsible. But with that action, it's brought the whole Sikh community into the spotlight. Whether intended or unintended, we now have to deal with that. And we have to now not only repair the damage done, but we have to collectively protect not only the community, but the Kakar as well. So this was an important message that we had to share with you today, because we were restricted with what we could say formally on the television. But it was his choice to draw a weapon and use it in an offensive manner. That does not correlate with the Sikh tenets of the Sikh faith. We made that very clear.
So there you see the statement from the Sikh Federation UK. They are at least unequivocally condemning the murder, which is the important point here. Without exception, they are condemning the murder. One senses that they are aware of the whirlwind that is about to hit their community with regards to two-tier justice. Having, of course, gone through the war on terror years, that whirlwind, take it from us, is not a gentle one, but perhaps a much needed shaking of the tree. So to start with, it's important to, of course, remember the family response we played first. The Sikh Federation, it's important to remember, have unequivocally condemned it. Now we would like to move to what we believe are responses that are perhaps slightly tone deaf in their reaction. The first is in order of least to worst, in fact, we will go. So the least worst is Kemi Badenoch's response, who is the leader of the British Conservative Party. She has given a tone-deaf response in her criticism of Nigel Farage on this point, but it's the least worst version of what we're about to show you. So we'll start with hers. This is the leader of the British Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, on her official account saying, I don't want to hear about Black Lives Matter. I don't want to hear about White Lives Matter. Everyone matters. Henry Nowak matters. That's because in the same Times article that we mentioned earlier, it has been reported that the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, has criticised Nigel Farage for politicising the topic, which is a tone-deaf part of Kemi Badenoch's intervention. Because once we show you Farage's intervention, you will see that Badenoch misses the mark. But here it is, nevertheless. It is, of course, worth saying at this stage that Badenoch is clearly sincere in her response here. It's heartfelt, though wrong. That portion of it, where she goes for Nigel Farage.
It should be White Lives Matter. Are you making the same point?
It should be everyone matters. It should be everyone matters. We should not make this about Nigel Farage. This is about Henry Nowak. And I listened to his father, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. And this morning I watched that body cam footage, and I just kept thinking, what if that was my boy? That his last moments were spent in handcuffs. He knew he was dying, and he could see the confusion, his attacker claiming that he had been a racist. It's an awful, awful way for anyone to die. And I don't think anyone should, it doesn't matter whether it's politicians or the police or the public. The first place we need to start is what that boy had gone through and what his family is going through. That case shows that something has gone very horribly wrong with policing, and I think I know why. I think that in 2020, 2021, there was a response to the George Floyd murders that is overcorrected and caused a lot of problems. I put out a report.
Black Lives Matter?
Yes.
Nigel Farage said today it should be White Lives Matter. Are you making the same point?
It should be everyone matters. It should be everyone matters. I put out a report in 2021 saying that our country is not racist and our police are not institutionally racist. And I think the training that many of these police are having don't have any common sense in them. We need to bring back common sense. You don't need to be trained on racism or anti-racism to have seen what Henry was experiencing and know that he needed help. You don't need it. Something has gone wrong with policing. But we all need to take a good, long, hard look at ourselves. It is not just the police. I remember when this movement was happening and I was saying we are creating different rules for different people. All of the people who were taking the knee about a man who died in another country should think about doing the same here. We need to bring back equality under the law. What Nigel Farage is doing is reinforcing the difference. I have said that we need to find what we have in common, not what separates us. I don't want to hear about Black Lives Matter. I don't want to hear about White Lives Matter. We all matter. Enough of this nonsense where we keep separating everybody and splitting people into different groups. We are descending into tribalism. I do not want that. It is why I say that we should be a multiracial country, not a multicultural country. Let's have one shared culture, British culture. How the police treat everyone should not matter depending on the color of their skin. And we shouldn't pretend that racism is something that only happens to ethnic minorities. It happens to everybody, black or white.
Now, take it from us, and we're going to show you in a moment, but take it from us as somebody having, which we'll also show you, having been involved in this kind of conversation for well over a decade. Take it from us as we say to you that Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, member of Parliament, has that you just saw, lifted Nigel Farage's talking points, lifted his framing and reference points for understanding and framing this problem in society, adopted all of them, and while doing so, criticized him for having said it first. That's otherwise known, Kemi, as cultural appropriation. And it's what you've just done in that interview. We're going to show you Nigel Farage's video that he put out at 8 a.m. this morning, the emergency address, to which Kemi Badenoch is responding. And you will hear in that video Farage making it absolutely clear that he wants equality and that what he's doing is pointing out the inequality. It leaves no room for doubt when Farage has given that emergency address that his aspiration is one rule for all. It's why he's calling out the two-tier justice system. He's not saying he wants a one-tier a inverse two-tier justice system where there's white supremacy. What he's saying is he wants one tier. He wants one law for all, equality under the rule of law. However, you can disagree with how that could come about. You could disagree with what it means in reality, but it is disingenuous to accuse Farage of prioritizing white lives matter over black lives or brown lives or yellow lives or pink lives or melon colored lives, whatever color you want under the sun, as long as it's not a rainbow, right? Joke. So the point is that this is when we said, and we used the phrase, a tone deaf response, the tone deaf part of what you heard Kemi say there was the pointing fingers at Farage, while of course culturally appropriating everything Farage has been saying for years, and as we're about to show you that I've been saying for years as well. So what Kemi Badenoch has done is attempt to ride that horse, which is great. Really, that shouldn't be a problem. Nobody in our position who've been speaking about these topics for over a decade should be upset that they're being mainstreamed. That's the point of talking about them, is it not? Not to own them, but to spread them so others also adopt them. And of course, the best form of adopting an idea is feeling like you own it yourself. So there's nothing to complain about here. The issue is don't do so while attacking those who came before you. In other words, Kemi, who in Farage's case are people whose lead you should be taking, whether or not you think you're the leader this country deserves or not. That's the leader you're going to get. That's actually the leader this country deserves. And Kemi Badenoch, you will end up following him, whether you like it or not. So that was tone deaf response number one, but it gets worse. We did say in Kemi's defense that was the least worst. We're going to move to the Labour acolyte and Labour Party Keir Starmer acolyte, Labour Party apparatchik, public prosecutor, British Pakistani Nazir Afzal, because he's also decided to use this moment to intervene in a way and have a sly little dig at Nigel Farage. You can see it on your screens now. This is the lead prosecutor in a couple of the northern containment cases for the UK underage rape, so-called grooming gang scandal. Nazir Afzal was Keir Starmer's appointment when Keir Starmer was Director of Public Prosecutions, and he covered up the grooming gang's underage rape scandal. Nazir Afzal was Keir Starmer's chosen appointment to prosecute some of these cases as token prosecutions in order to contain the story. So no wonder Nazir Afzal has said Henry Nowak's murder is first and foremost a human tragedy. His killer was convicted and lessons for policing need to be learned, and quickly. Okay, so far so good. Then he carries on. Is there a crime that Farage won't exploit for political ends? Apart from that mate of his, Nathan Gill, convicted of bribery for promoting Russia. Well, we're going to show you our response. It's right here on your screens now. This was our response on Twitter, quoting the public prosecutor Nazir Afzal's attack on Farage. We've said, sit down. You are a shameful Keir Starmer acolyte who allowed himself to be used by the Labour Party in an attempt to contain the national scale of the underage rape, quote unquote, grooming gang scandal via a few token prosecutions. You are now exposed. That is our response to this man, Nazir Afzal. He asks, is there a crime that Farage won't exploit for political ends? The truth is, as our regular listeners will know, as we've discussed the underage rape grooming gang scandals, again, for over a decade, our regular listeners will know it was Nazir Afzal's boss, Keir Starmer, who used the criminal actions of the organized underage rape gangs for political purposes, to present the Labour Party as somehow a defender of anti-racism by preventing news of that scandal from reaching the public. It's Nazir Afzal and his friend Keir Starmer that have politicized these crimes, not Nigel Farage, who is calling out their politicization. That's why we've listed this as the second worst in terms of worse than Kemi Badenoch's intervention, though we've just realized we've just shown you the worst one. This is in order number 3. Forgive us, because the one we're going to show you now isn't actually as bad as that. It should have come first, but it is the intervention by independent lawyer and community activist from Birmingham, better known on TV as Ahmed Yaqub. Ahmed, bro, apologies. You're not worse than Nazir Afzal's intervention. You are slightly worse than Kemi Badenoch's intervention. You deserve spot number 2, not 3. 3 goes to Nazir Afzal. Apologies for that. We're doing this live, and of course, sometimes the order of events as we're speaking to you live, producing the show, streaming it, putting up the videos, it's all being done at the same time. So sometimes that happens. But here is the independent commentator Ahmed Yaqub from Birmingham's response. Again, this is a tone-deaf response. Remember, we're talking about tone-deaf responses. It is slightly worse than Kemi Badenoch's, but better than Nazir Afzal, the prosecutors. And here it is on your screens now, and we'll just play it for you.
Individuals. Sikhs for hundreds of years have been carrying the kirpan. It is a sign of duty, justice, and protecting the vulnerable. It's not about violence. Religious freedom and public safety can coexist. People need to understand this. We as Muslims get targeted every time a Muslim makes a mistake. This should not happen. If a Sikh commits a mistake, that is his own personal choice, and Sikhism hasn't advised him to commit that crime. We send out our prayers for the family of the deceased Henry Nowak. The perpetrator has already been punished. A perpetrator who is a criminal, he's being punished. The Sikh faith is not on trial, and people need to understand this. A lot of people who pander to the far right need to wake up now. The Sikh community, I feel for you, and I stand with you. Remember that.
Now, to be fair, it's why I'm smiling, because that wasn't clearly, again, I want to emphasize, I don't want to be unjust to the brother Ahmed Yaqub. He wasn't as bad as Nazir Afzal's ridiculous politicization, because Nazir Afzal has a history and form in this regard, having been Keir Starmer's man in the national cover-up of the underage rape grooming gang scandal. There's no comparison. Ahmed, his response, though I disagree with it, isn't as bad as that. But why? To clarify, in case he ends up seeing this, why do I disagree with it? Well, because unfortunately, this is a tendency that it was done also during the War on Terror years, where the knee-jerk reaction in any event of such a tragedy to defend oneself prior to or one's sense of self, in this case, people of color, minority communities, from fear of being targeted, to defend one's communities. Here he's defending the Sikh community. Muslims during the War on Terror defended the Muslim communities. The fear of Islamophobia, or the fear of anti-Sikh bigotry, has become the first thought after the tragic murder of an 18-year-old boy called Henry Nowak, who was stabbed 4 times, handcuffed by police, arrested, and died in their arms handcuffed while telling them he couldn't breathe. Your first concern should be the victim, and you should lead in a story like this. You should lead with the systemic and institutional failures and cultural and societal and political failures that led to this tragic death of the 18-year-old boy Henry Nowak. Once all of that is out the way, you can then say, and of course, not every Sikh is responsible for those failures. However, they have played a role, just like Muslims played a role in the War on Terror. So did foreign policy play a role. So did racism play a role. So did invasion of countries. But Muslims in Islam also played a role. The role it played was in the manifestation of Islamist theocrats who ultimately emerged from our communities. We have to take responsibility for that part of it. Now, the fact is that yes, not every Sikh is responsible for the actions of this one attacker, murderer, but the point is that what societal, institutional, cultural, and political context, in terms of failures in those various spheres, led to this tragedy. That should be your first concern, just as after the Macpherson inquiry, the institutional failures in a sense of racism that let down Stephen Lawrence was your reaction then. Why is it not the same reaction now? Why is your immediate concern the community from where the killer came, the community that ultimately gave birth to the killer, rather than the victim and his context? That is the sadness of Ahmed Yaqub's response, because like Kemi Badenoch's, which is why his was number 2 in the tone deaf responses, like Kemi Badenoch's, it was clearly sincere. It was clearly well-meaning, but it misses the point because of an still residing emotional reaction of defensiveness when being presented with facts that simply require to be accepted as they are. And that is, here, an 18-year-old boy was stabbed to death while cuffed by police and not believed when he couldn't breathe. Those are the facts that you should just wholeheartedly ponder upon without any emotional baggage of not wanting to be perceived as responsible for this failure. That baggage doesn't need to be there. What needs to be there instead is empathy for the victim, his family, and his context. So that would apply if it were a black man or a Muslim or a yellow man. As I said, pick any color you want. We don't care in that situation. The victim who is clearly being let down by the culture is who deserves our primary knee-jerk emotional investment. And of course, while doing so, we do so in a manner that befits being British, which is we don't target vulnerable communities and offload our frustration onto them. We target the systemic failures and the institutional failures that have led to this problem. So, of course, the every Sikh isn't responsible, but it is, frankly, tone deaf to lead with that sentiment, just as it was tone deaf to lead during the War on Terror years with the sentiment, but every Muslim isn't responsible. When a bomb blows up a whole bunch of innocent people on a train or a bus, as it did in London, then the response should be first and foremost emotionally invested in the victims and the institutional failures that failed those victims. So, of course, that was tone deaf response number 2. Number 3 was Nazir Afzal's that we've already played you. But now we're going to play you. And by the way, that is the when referencing Nazir Afzal's tone deaf response, the failures of the Labour Party are well and truly for whom Nazir Afzal was used, of course, the Labour Party, in covering up their underage rape grooming gang scandal. Their failures are best represented by their Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, in his contrasting reactions to both the BLM George Floyd killing in police hands and Henry Nowak, the 18-year-old's killing in police hands. On your screens now is a graphic that is depicting this tension between Keir Starmer's response then during BLM and his response now. If you remember, those of us with long enough memories, remember Keir Starmer, the now Prime Minister, took the knee. You can see it there with Angela Rayner. They both took the knee during BLM. And yet here we are in a country where, due to the Labour Party's abysmally failed policies of multiculturalism, which we're going to come to, we find ourselves in a situation that we currently find ourselves in. But what we wanted to do now is show you the response that should matter, if we can find it, and that is Nigel Farage's response, and that's his emergency response from 8 a.m. this morning, because this is a not tone deaf response. It's the response that so riled Kemi Badenoch and clearly riled the public prosecutor Nazir Afzal, the Keir Starmer acolyte. But nevertheless, this is the correct, we believe, tone to take in this case. And here it is on your screens, Nigel Farage's emergency 8 a.m. address to the nation. We're going to play this for you and demonstrate why we believe it's the correct tone, because, of course, I personally am not a member of any political party, but this is correct. Take it as an assessment while not being a member of the Reform Party or any other party. This is the tone politicians should be taking. And the reason we're going to show you why we feel so strongly about this is after this, from 10 years ago, we're going to play you my own intervention on LBC before they cancelled me for opposing every single COVID mandate, and show you what I said back then, and show you that, in fact, consistently, this has been the tone that I've been urging people to take. But here it is, nevertheless, the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Nigel Farage, responding to the killing of Henry Nowak, the 18-year-old boy who was stabbed multiple times and placed in handcuffs and died in the hands of police. Responding here is Nigel Farage, 8 a.m. this morning, in an emergency address to the nation.
Good morning. It's a moment to take a long, hard look at ourselves as a country and what we've become. The murder of 18-year-old student Henry Nowak was bad enough of itself, but compounded in the most extraordinary way by the behaviour of the police officers. Many of us have asked for the footage to be released, and finally, last night it was. Let me show you just 30 seconds of what happened on that fateful evening in Southampton.
Right, let's get you out of there, shall we?
I was in bed asleep. Whenever just found out, I can't breathe.
Grab his other arm. What's happened to you, alright? You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? Don't think you have, mate.
Just think of it. An 18-year-old lad, a student, been out with some friends for the evening, on the way home, and victim of a sustained attack. Stabbed several times, chased down the street. Stabbed seriously 5 times. And what happens? Well, the assailant's brother rings the police to say, we've just been racially attacked and abused by a white guy. The sirens blare, they arrive. Young Henry must have thought that at last help was at hand, but far, far from it. The police act from the beginning to the end, and the end when he dies, lying on a pavement, having been stabbed in handcuffs. The last thing he heard on this earth was him being read his rights by the police. He was actually treated in a way that meant an accusation of a racial slur was treated more seriously than an act of murder. What does he say? I can't breathe. Familiar words? Remember career criminal George Floyd, who died in appalling circumstances in Midwest America a few years ago. Remember the reaction to that and the way the police behaved. Within a few days, Keir Starmer was taking the knee. Black Lives Matter exploded all over the country. Churchill's statue was defaced. The cenotaph was vandalised. And yet, what has the public reaction been from our leaders and politicians? And indeed, to be frank, much of the media to this. Silence. Absolute silence. Proof, if ever there was any, that we're living in a two-tier culture in this country where the rights and privileges of white people matter less than those of ethnic minorities. Now, what has happened over the last few decades is, without anybody being asked, without anybody ever voting for it, we've been subjected to mass immigration on a scale that is truly unbelievable. At least 10 million new people have come to Britain in the last 20 years. And let's be clear, many of them are great people who work hard, have integrated and made their lives here. But far too many that have come have refused to integrate, are leading parallel lives and leaving many of our cities almost culturally unrecognisable from what they've always been. But to stop any criticism of this, we brought in hate speech laws. We brought in a DEI agenda. We brought in what is called positive discrimination in favour of ethnic minorities over those of white people whose families have lived in Britain in many cases for centuries. That is the mess that we've got into. And that is why, in some ways, what happened and despite the appalling behaviour of those police officers, but in some ways, what happened on that night in Southampton perhaps shouldn't be a surprise in two-tier Britain. Alison Pearson, journalist on the Daily Telegraph, received yesterday an email from an experienced, long-serving Hampshire police officer. In it, he makes perfectly clear that the police are told that they must respond to situations in different ways according to the ethnicity of those involved in the crime or potential crime. He also describes how a DEI agenda has gone so far through the police that people now get promoted, not on the basis of merit, not on the basis of ability, but on the basis of what their racial or religious origin is. That has led to a decline in policing standards. But think of this. Much as we may condemn the two police officers involved here, think of this. The biggest fear a police officer now has going about his or her duty on the street is the fear of being reported for having acted in a way that was racially biased. That fear, now greater than dealing with a dying man living on the ground. Henry's family have responded to this in just the most extraordinarily dignified way. But I suggest the rest of us respond to this with pure, cold rage. This is wrong. All the values and standards of living in a free country where everybody is judged equally before the law have been trashed and thrown away. And there are one or two things that need to happen very quickly. The first is that the police complaints operation, the IOPC, needs to get to the bottom of this and produce a report very, very quickly. Secondly, even through to sentencing, the sentence given was actually lower than the recommended minimum for a sustained, aggressive, murderous assault. And I'll be writing today to the Attorney General asking him to review the sentence. But the most important thing that needs to change, that has to change, if our society is not to be ripped apart, where communities start to distrust each other and deeply distrust the police and all the other institutions of this country, is we need a change in culture. Enough of anti-white prejudice. A promotion of the idea that white lives matter just as much as black lives. An end to DEI and positive discrimination, but a country that treats everybody equally and fairly before the law. This is serious. This is urgent. I fear for where our society will be in a few short years if we don't grip this and do it very, very quickly. I want to send my sincerest condolences, the country's sincerest condolences to Henry's family. I hope this is the last time a British police force operates in this way. But the fish rots from the head down. It is up to government and police chiefs to change this culture and to start that process today. Thank you.
Now, there is nothing wrong with what Nigel Farage just said in that emergency address to the nation at 8 a.m. today. Everything said in that address sounds perfectly reasonable. One can reasonably disagree with something in that address, though I personally don't. But one mustn't, as Kemi Badenoch did, deliberately spin that, you just heard Farage say there, into him calling for white lives matter more than black lives matter. No, that is Kemi Badenoch playing politics with the message that Farage is leading on here, which is, as you heard him clearly state in the video, one law for all is what he believes in, and how accusations or fears of Islamophobia, racism, bigotry should not be used and weaponized in a duplicitous manner to silence criticism where criticism is due. That's a summary of the point Farage just made. It's incredibly disingenuous for Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, to say Farage believes in anything other than that summary that we just presented to you. The video makes it clear. It's why Badenoch gets the least worst rule option as number 3 for the tone deaf responses, because of course once you hear what Farage said, it is not the case that he is attempting to say that white lives matter more than black lives. Now, Nazir Afzal, the Labour acolyte of Keir Starmer, it's expected he would respond in a manner attacking Farage. But of course, the fact that Kemi Badenoch is aligning herself with that line of attack speaks to why the nation has stopped voting for the Conservative Party, and as it did in the last local elections, will continue voting for the Reform Party. The Conservative Party once again demonstrating that they're more concerned with attacking Farage than they are about the truth. Now, take that from me as somebody who, again, is not a member of Reform or any political party. In fact, the most that can be said politically for me is that in 2015, in London's Hampstead and Kilburn, I stood as a Liberal Democrat candidate only because Lord Paddy Ashdown, the late Lord Ashdown, may he rest in peace, was my political sponsor. And I was impressed by the work he had done in Bosnia to stop the genocide in Bosnia. And so that was it. I left that party once Lord Ashdown tragically passed away, or sadly passed away. So the accusation that this would be a bias endorsement of Farage is neither here nor there. The fact is, it's the only response that isn't tone deaf to the pain that is being felt by the nation. And to demonstrate that, it's something I've been saying for over a decade. Here on your screens is a Daily Express article from 2016, 19th of December 2016 to be precise. And the headline you can see on your screens makes it clear. I have said over a decade ago, multiculturalism is dead. LBC host savages liberals as the real racists who failed Britain. That's a British newspaper, the Daily Express, reporting on my then LBC intervention from December 2016, which we're again going to play for you now, just to demonstrate the fact that there are deeper institutional problems that this case of the killing of 18-year-old Henry Nowak raise in Britain, and those problems can no longer be ignored, which is why Farage gave his emergency address at 8 a.m. this morning. But the problems are also not new, and it's because they're not new that they can no longer be ignored, because they have in fact reached boiling point, especially considering 10 years ago we were already at our wits' end about it. Listen to this.
Multiculturalism has failed. I believe that. Now, put the oath thing aside for a moment and let's look at the substance, because I think that the oaths and, hoo-has around symbolism and nationalism are largely symbolic. But multiculturalism has failed. It has. And, people on my end of the political spectrum, those who like to consider themselves liberals, and regular listeners will know that I've begun to differentiate between the left and the liberals, because a lot of the far left are no longer liberal. But nevertheless, for the purposes of this conversation, let's look at the left and the liberals, who, rightly so, by the way, sneer at British expats abroad who travel to foreign countries and form isolated, ghettoized communities and end up becoming more British than they're British because of the way in which they don't acclimatize to the local culture. They don't learn the languages of the local culture, and they make absolutely zero attempt to integrate. In fact, I, laughed very hard once upon a time at a Goodness Gracious Me sketch where the British Indian family went to India and was sitting in a restaurant and said, "Bring me," to the waiter, who was this perfectly reasonable English gentleman. It was a reverse of, if you're getting the role play here, it's all reversed. And they said, he said, can I, it was in an English restaurant in India. And the joke was, "Bring us the blandest dish on the menu." And often it is the case that British expats don't integrate when they're abroad, and liberals and those on the left sneer at such behavior. And for the life of me, I can't understand that when that behavior, when that isolationism, when that ghettoization is repeated within our own country by communities that live among us, somehow it's racist to criticize that or to talk about it. So let's put aside the oath for a minute, because I often say on this show that the facts speak for themselves. And if we genuinely don't want to reside in a post-truth, post-fact society, then that applies as much as it does to the populist right as it does to the left. So let's hear the facts and tell me what you think, whether multiculturalism has succeeded or not. Before I read out to you some of these facts, I just want to say something. The first victims of the failure to integrate in this society are the very minority communities that those on the left claim they wanted to support. Their refusal to challenge some behavior and some practices that go on within my own community has ended up in creating, through the lack of integration, a lack of social mobility, a lack of success within those very same communities that they claimed to want to be helping. The first victims of a lack of integration are the minority communities themselves. So let's put that at the forefront of our minds before we proceed, because what you're about to hear is a progressive critique of the failure of multiculturalism. You're about to hear a liberal critique of the failure of multiculturalism. It can be done. And the way it can be done is by putting the interests of the minority communities first. And if minority communities are falling behind due to a government policy of the 90s known as multiculturalism, then the government has failed minority communities. And there is the liberal critique of multiculturalism. Muslims out of those minority communities are the ones suffering the most out of everyone. So now let's hear the statistics, the facts of the matter. The reality is, dear listeners, that on every indicator of social failure, we British Muslims are performing the worst. That's the reality. Let's start with prison. Prison is a major indicator of social failure. 5% of this country are Muslim. Do you know how many percentage of our prison population are Muslims? From that 5%, 14.4% of the population in prison are Muslim. That's a major, major failure. 20% of the population of prisons, that's how much it went up by over the last decade. The population of prison went up by 20%, but the rise in Muslim prisoners went up by 122%. And it's the same all over Europe. There is a major problem. And only a post-truth, post-fact liberal or lefty would ignore or pretend that there isn't a problem. When you've got 5% of our country are Muslim, and yet in prison, 14.4% of the prison population are Muslim. That cannot be good by any measure. That cannot be defined as success by any measure. Let's move to employment. Surprise, surprise. British Muslims are unemployed at a rate more than double of the general population. The general population's unemployment rate stands at 5.5%. British Muslims' unemployment in this country is at 12.8%. That cannot be defined as success by any measure. No liberal or no lefty can tell me that's a good thing. And so multiculturalism has failed Britain's Muslims first and foremost. Let's move to gender equality. Out of the 12.8% of unemployed in this country, 65% of them are Muslim women. So not only are Muslims disproportionately unemployed in this country, out of those disproportionately unemployed, 65% of them are British Muslim women. And that's not, by the way, because people don't want to employ them, because the same survey asked employers how many would be willing to employ British Muslim women, and 75% of them said they would. Multiculturalism is dead. There's a triple paralysis when it comes to women, because they suffer from both the stigma within their own communities for seeking independence, cultural stigma, and so there's a paralysis that is because they're Muslim, there's a paralysis because they're female, and there's a paralysis because they come from an ethnic minority community. That triple paralysis has led to what the Women's Inequalities Committee in the House of Parliament described British Muslim women as, quote, the most disadvantaged group in society. 35% of all Muslim women from the age of 16 to 64 are unemployed in this country, compared to the 69% of the employment rate among women in the general population. That cannot be defined as success by any measure. Let's move to education. Again, the lowest performing. 24% of British Muslims reached a qualification level 4 or above. That's lower than the general population and a lot lower than the rate within British Hindus, which stands at 45%, and British Sikhs at 30%. So when compared to other minority groups, it's a huge failure in education. And let's finally move to values. Liberal values with a small L. A 2016 ICM poll found that 52% of Britain's Muslims would ban homosexuality if they had a choice. And don't take it from me, because it's not just one survey. Let me give you some other surveys, and then you see a pattern beginning to emerge. A 2007 poll found that 36% of British Muslims said that apostates deserve to be killed. In fact, you heard one of them on my show call in just yesterday. He called himself Omar. 36% of British Muslims said apostates deserve to be killed. A 2008 YouGov poll surveying a British Muslim student opinion found 33% saying they supported a caliphate. A 2015 Comres poll, this is from last year, folks, after the Charlie Hebdo attacks in Paris, found that a whopping quarter of British Muslims expressed sympathy for the Charlie Hebdo attacks. A quarter of British Muslims in a 2015 Comres poll expressed sympathy for those brutal murderers who killed people who were working for a cartoon magazine. By what measure can the 90s Labour Party model of multiculturalism be deemed a success after you've heard all of that? Because every measure of failure in society, Muslims top the polls in failure. This is my people. This is my community. So when I speak about this, I speak from a place of love and disgust at the failures of government, and disgust at those so-called community leaders within our communities who are hiding these truths from the women of our communities, the minorities within the minorities, from the gay Muslims, from the ex-Muslims, from the liberal Muslims, from the feminist Muslims. The truth is being obfuscated and hidden by these Tim Pot community leaders who pretend to speak on everyone's behalf. Surprise, surprise, when there was a survey done on it, once again, giving you some facts, a dose of truth, when there was a survey done on it, the Muslim Council of Britain, guess what the percentage of Muslims in the UK said they refer to the Muslim Council of Britain for leadership? Only 2%. And so why does the Muslim Council of Britain have a stranglehold, a monopoly on British Muslim leadership when only 2% of Britain's Muslims said they see them as leaders? I'm not anyone's leader, by the way. I'm just a dude with a microphone. But the point is, at least I can tell you the truth and not be obscured, not be post-truth, not be post-fact, because of the way in which we have become, due to political correctness, to fear that we're going to be called racist if we speak in this way. The truth is, what's truly racist is failing British Muslims in this way. What's truly racist is sitting back while a disproportionate number of us are in prisons, are failing at education, are the most unemployed in this country, and our women are the ones who are the biggest sufferers of this stigma in the country overall from any disadvantaged group. It's truly racist not to want to do anything about that. And the problem has been that we've been celebrating differences and not commonality. The problem has been a bigotry of low expectations. Multiculturalism is dead. Long live omniculturalism. Long live integration. Long live people not fearing from fear of being called racist or Islamophobic or anti-Muslim bigots, from wanting to do something to uplift Muslim minorities in this country so that they're on par with everyone else. That's what equality means. And multiculturalism failed these communities. It's high time we had a policy that celebrated what we have in common rather than how we are different. And a policy that focused on integration instead of segregation.
Well, there we have it. No doubt the station, Global's LBC, for whom I used to work and where that clip was recorded, will be right now with their lead hothead, James O'Brien, attacking Nigel Farage rather than taking that tone. But that was 10 years ago, 2016, on LBC, pretty much forecasting what we are currently witnessing unfold in our country. It is best articulated in my words as follows. I'll just read for you a post from my socials on the topic, and we will conclude today's show. It is indeed a tragic situation to witness the killing of Henry Nowak in this way for the country. The country is in a state of shock. Here is on your screens now from my socials, my forecast in 2016. Just to read from a article, opinion piece from secularism's secularism.org.uk, National Secular Society, for whom I was a fellow, and you can see that on your screens now from 2016. Our 1990s era multiculturalism was intended to bring about diverse communities. Instead, it brought about monocultural ghettos. Two complementary trends arose together that culturally disintegrated Britain. Within my own Muslim communities, Islamism, a theocratic ideology which sought to impose a version of Islam over society, emerged practically unchallenged to insist that we were Muslims to the exclusion of every other identity. Meanwhile, among mainstream liberals, multiculturalism came to mean diversity between rather than within groups. As a country, we ended up living together apart. That's from 2016. I've signed it off there, the shadow knows, tagged Nigel Farage, because as you can see, our support for Farage's intervention is over a decade old. And again, part two from my socials, two-tier justice, I've said, is the inevitable consequence of, quote, progressive left identitarianism. Leftist identitarianism has led to nothing but a rise in majoritarian nativist sentiment. The moment tribalism was dressed up as progressive, it was always going to end this way. Quota systems and victimhood narratives are counterproductive. Those who have been following long enough will know, despite the obvious long-standing pretense online to attribute nothing to me because I do not exist, that this outcome is precisely why I coined the phrase regressive left back in 2012 for my autobiography, Radical. And with that, we conclude today's stream endorsing Nigel Farage's emergency intervention to the nation at 8 a.m. this morning, stating it plainly and clearly, if it isn't obvious by now, our belief that only Nigel Farage as a man, with the Reform Party as a consequence of Nigel Farage as a man, not the other way around. My favor is given to the man, Nigel Farage, and as a consequence, his Reform Party used to be before that the Brexit Party, used to be before that the UKIP Party. It doesn't matter. Each time the party was dismantled and reassembled under the leadership of the man, Nigel Farage. His intervention at 8 a.m. this morning struck the right tone. Kemi Badenoch can be dismissed, even though her intervention was heartfelt. She weaponized and politicized the moment to attack her political rival. Likewise, the Labour Party apparatchik, public prosecutor Nazir Afzal, his intervention can be dismissed simply because he is a Labour Party apparatchik, and they are responsible for the problem that we are currently in as a country. He was appointed by Starmer as a public prosecutor. That's what I mean by being a Labour Party apparatchik before he gets his knickers in a twist. He worked for Starmer to publicly prosecute the grooming gangs cases, who, in our opinion, as radical media, were containment prosecutions to cover up Keir Starmer's deeper and the Labour Party's deeper institutional guilt in the national scandal of the underage rape grooming gang cases. Nazir Afzal's attack on Nigel Farage can be dismissed from the get-go. It doesn't even need to be taken seriously. Whereas Kemi Badenoch made some good points, but they were all points that she lifted from Nigel Farage. And we say that again to remind everybody, as somebody that is not a member of the Reform Party or any political party, simply as a man with a microphone that was attempting to say this on your national airwaves via LBC over a decade ago and got cancelled for refusing to stand down on these and other issues that the globalists in power were using to deprive us of our liberty, such as the COVID mandates. It's the microphone and the message that we would be happy for you to adopt. It doesn't matter where it came from, but the tone needs to be correct. On that note, we end this week's Warrior Creed live stream. We'll be back next week at the regular time. Those of you who are looking for the written version of this stream, the Radical Dispatch, the weekly newsletter, will be published tomorrow with all the receipts and videos from today's stream there. The podcast version of this stream will be contained within that Radical Dispatch for premium members. We ask everybody to support our work by going to Radical Media on majidnawaz.substack.com and become a paying premium subscriber, because without your support, we cannot continue this work. Until next week, you've been listening to The Radical here for the Warrior Creed live stream.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength. Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge. This service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.
Damn, that shit was dope.